Module 7, Hazard Analysis. And the aim of this unit is to show you how to conduct a hazard analysis. And the learning outcomes, by the end of this unit, you should be able to define risk and risk assessment, describe how to conduct a hazard analysis, assess the risk that a hazard may occur, assess the severity of a hazard. So hazard analysis, the definition for this is evaluating information on hazards and conditions leading to their presence to decide those which are significant to food safety. You need to consider contamination, multiplication and survival of toxins or spores at each step. You need to look at the raw ingredients, the characteristics and composition of the raw ingredients, the processing and preparation, the microbiology, premises, equipment design, packaging, distribution, and intended use of the consumer. So deciding which hazards are significant. First of all, risk. The definition of risk is the likelihood that a hazard will occur. A risk assessment is the process of identifying hazards, assessing likelihood of occurrence and severity, and evaluating their significance. You need to look at the complaint history and using your own experience, epidemiological information of the product. The severity is the magnitude of the hazard or the seriousness of the possible consequences. And the seriousness of the symptoms, they could be acute, which is short-term, or chronic, which is long-term. The mortality and morbidity rate, and any vulnerable groups that might be included in your process. Scientific information required, the potential hazards and risks, processing, cooking temperature, times to destroy any microbiological hazards, cooling times, preservative concentrations, the pH and AW. So pH is what we call the hydrogen ion content, or whether it's alkaline or acidic, and AW is the water content or moisture content. Post-process contamination, multiplication risk, risk from packaging, risk during distribution, and the shelf life of the product. A risk assessment matrix, this is used to assess significant hazards or to ensure critical control points are critical. Then again, there is an example in the notes that I supplied at the beginning of the course. So let's have a look at an example of this. We start off with this matrix. You got the risk on the left, severity on the bottom. So on the left, you go from low to high, from the bottom to the top. Similarly, with the severity, we go from left to right, low to high. So an example there, we've got cardboard in cooked chicken meal, where the risk is low, the severity is low, and you multiply the two together, and that gives you a figure of a score of 100, which is classed as low. Then a pin in cooked chicken, the severity there is, we got low risk, medium severity. We multiply the two together, that gives us 1,000. So that's a medium score. Then if we look at two above that, we've got a stone in jam and a mouse in product. Again, giving us different scores. Then if we go on to the high risk, we got a bone in fish. It's low severity of it happening. Is a high risk of it happening. Low severity because it's not going to cause much of a problem, but there's a high risk of it being present. That gives us a score of 10,000, which is high. Similarly, if you look at the razor blade in a loaf of bread, it's low risk. It's not likely to occur, but it could. Obviously, if you're using metal detectors and spotters, it's not going to happen. But the severity, if that happens, if that gets in somebody's mouth, it's going to cause a lot of problems. Then we got middle one there. We got salmonella in undercooked chicken. We got botulism in low acid food. And the top one is E. coli 0157 in undercooked beef burger. So you can see what's happening here is we're looking at scores on the doors, if you like, with what are really important factors to consider when you're using a risk assessment matrix. So you do a risk assessment matrix for your own product in your own business. HACCP control chart, as I mentioned, here's examples of it being filled in. So you can print this out from the notes and complete your own HACCP control chart. So with purchase of product, you've got the hazard is contamination or possible contamination. Delivery could be multiplication of bacteria, especially if the product's not held in suitable temperatures. Storage frozen, again multiplication if the temperature is not cold enough, must be -18 or lower. Preparation of thawing, multiplication again of bacteria. Storage in chilled containers or fridges, multiplication again if the temperature is not low enough. Cooking, survival of bacteria if it's not cooked to an adequate temperature. Bacteria tend to start dying off at about 55 degrees C, so food must be cooked well above 55. We say cook to 75, that's the Food Standards Agency guide, but as a chef, I would suggest cooking at a lower temperature, especially with meats, because you basically cook the balls out of meat if you cook at 75. It'll be dry and it won't be very palatable. But again, you've got to discuss that with your HACCP team. Cooling, you could get multiplication if it's cooled over a long period of time or not under controlled conditions. Storage in chilled fridges could be multiplication, again, if the temperature is not low enough. Slice and preparation, it could be contamination, cross-contamination if using raw and cooked in on the same chopping board, for example, and you could also get multiplication. Serving could be multiplication and contamination if it's not served quickly enough or under controlled conditions. And again, add in the black pepper. So we're looking at the chicken with black pepper. Germination of spores. Spores, as you probably know from your food safety training, almost impossible to kill. So you need to keep products that contain spores under controlled conditions. One of the best controlled conditions is to keep it dry. So key points, we looked at risk and risk assessment, how to conduct a hazard analysis, the risk that a hazard may occur, the severity of a hazard.